Hi, I'm Weston. I love talking about the Astros, and I'm here to begin a little series of videos where I'm going to go through and grade every single player from 2021. Now, this is the first one. I'm going to make 4 of these. This video is only on the infield and catcher, so Maldonado, Castro, Yuli, Altuve, Correa, even though he might not be an Astro, Bregman, and Diaz, who I'm going to talk about in this video. The next one will be the outfielders and Yordan Alvarez. The one after that will be the starting rotation. And the fourth one will be the bullpen. So this is going to be a little bit of a series for the channel for the next, 2 weeks when I release these. I'm hoping to release them like every 3 days. When I'm recording this, I have all of the hitters grades done. I'm already about a third of the way through the starting rotation, and then I'm going to have to do the bullpen. But hopefully by the time I get done making the first couple, I'll have finished the rest of the list. So before we actually get on to grading the first little group here, ground rules. This is only talking about 2021, and I'm going to specify this because I don't want anyone to go, well, Weston, what about what they did in 2020 or back in 2019? This is only 2020, so players that were great in years previous and bad in 2021 are going to be graded poorly, and the inverse is also true. I'm only looking at last season. On that same token, some of these are nice. And that's the nice thing about grading for a team that, made it to the World Series, that won a pennant. Most of our players were good. I don't think that's a stretch to say that the majority, were good to great players. However, this is also grading the players, so there are some that I have to be mean to. I don't want to be mean. I wish I could tell you that every single player on this team is perfect. That being said, they're very not, and there are players on here that I like that I had to grade pretty low, and it sucks. And I'm sorry in advance for giving players that you like low grades, but I tried to be unbiased and I tried to be objective, and that is the hardest part about making YouTube videos talking about sports teams. So, with all of that out of the way, let's get it started. The first player we're going to talk about, we're going to start with catcher. So, Martin Maldonado. All right. Man, what is there to say about Maldonado that hasn't been said a dozen different times by a dozen different people? He had a bad 2021. Martin Maldonado played in 126 games last season, including 118 starts as our catcher. So without any shadow of a doubt, he was the starting catcher for the Houston Astros. He started he basically started 75% of the games. He was the workhorse for the Astros as the catcher. And here's the thing about that. He just wasn't good enough to be the starting catcher. And I'm sorry to say that. I wish I could say he was fantastic. But I looked through everything I could possibly find because I was trying to genuinely find statistics that said Maldi was fantastic. And they don't exist, I know, because I spent hours digging trying to find them. Now, on that, it is absolutely no exaggeration to say that he was the best defensive catcher on the Astros. No one's going to argue that. He was easily the best. He had 2.1 framing runs this season, which that is how many runs were gained by his framing for the Astros. And a lot of this is going to be from Baseball Prospectus when I'm talking about the 2 catchers, by the way. So he was a framer that got 2.1 runs, which led the team kind of by a lot. That being said, that was 27th in Major League Baseball, which is not great. Now, that being said, there is something that we can, without a shadow of a doubt, talk about for Maldonado that talks about how good he was, which is he has a cannon for an arm. He's called the machete for a reason. His swipe rate above average was 3rd best in Major League Baseball among catchers with at least 10,000 pitches, which that's just basically starting catchers. That still was a very extensive group, but I'm just trying to look at who was an actual starting catcher. Along with that, he was 11th in stolen base attempts against. So people kind of knew by and large not to try to go against this guy. And the ones that did were met with some very unfortunate results. He had a 40% caught stealing rate this season. That was 2nd in the American League behind, I want to say it was Salvador Perez. He's got a cannon. Players didn't steal on Maldonado all that much, and when they did, they paid for it by getting thrown out. For reference, there's I want to say it was done by Bill James, the number that you really should be at for stealing bases for it to be helping your team than hindering it should be 75%. So Maldonado could have given up 10% more stolen bases, and he still would have been statistically not worth it to try to steal on the guy. He was very good at throwing out runners. I'm not going to lie, and he was fantastic. He was one of the best at throwing out runners. Again, he's the machete for a reason. But that's really the only statistical thing you can look at to quantify that he was a good player or not. There are obviously intangibles. I think saying that he isn't a leader is absolutely asinine. He is clearly one of the outspoken voices and leaders of this clubhouse. Pitchers obviously like pitching with him. The players adore him, and he adores the players on the team. And that's what's really hard with Maldonado, is fans like him, and I can't blame them. He is a very happy person. He's nice. He's a wonderful team player. He loves the city of Houston. He took a pay cut to come back here for the couple of years that he signed the extension for. So I get why people like him, and I get why the players like him. He's awesome. That being said, there is the below Mendoza line elephant in the room that we have to talk about, which is offense. And that's the thing. If the defensive numbers were what they are, but his offense was just league average, you're fine. I have no quarrels with him whatsoever. That being said, his offense was ghastly this season, to say the least. Triple slash at 172, 272, and 300 with an OPS plus of 58. 100 is league average, and average for catchers is like 90. So even by the metric of, well, yeah, but catchers have below average offense, he was still bad. There's no way around it. WRC plus at 63, which is, again, bad. Expected batting average that was in the first percentile. Expected WOBA and expected slugging that were in the second. He bordered on a non-option this past season. And what makes it hard to talk about Maldonado is offensively, he was awful. One of the worst offensive players who had as many games as he did in Major League Baseball. Behind the plate, he was basically just average at framing. He was solid, throwing out runners. He was great at that. But overall, he just wasn't good. But again, the players love him. And the fans love him, and I'm one of them. I like Maldi a lot. I would like nothing more if next season, 2022, he just has a good season, right? Above average, framing, keeps up his gunning down of runners on the base paths, and just has an average offensive season where that WRC plus and OPS plus can just creep around like 95 to 100. If he did that, I'd be fine. I'd have no issue with Maldonado being the starter. But with numbers defensively that are just so-so and offensive numbers that are that below average, it's just hard to talk about Maldonado as much more than what should be a backup at this point, and that sucks. So I hate giving him a rating that is this low, but there's not much higher I can go with Maldonado. I gotta give him a 2 out of 10. I know, I'm sorry, but that's where it's gotta be. I can't give him much higher than that. And honestly, I bumped it up. Originally, I was going to put him at 1, but I felt bad putting it that low. And he was okay defensively, but man, I really just want him to split time this season with Jason Castro. And that leads us into our backup catcher, who I thought should have been the actual catcher, Jason Castro. Remember when the Astros brought him in and everyone thought, oh, cool, he and Maldi are going to platoon as a catcher duo? Yeah, that really didn't happen. What dreamers we were, huh? Castro had 66 games in 2021, and he only started 37 of them as our starting catcher. That's rough. Now, Castro was not good defensively, and that is not... There's no stretching it there. He was not good. Negative 11.2 framing runs, which is not good. But you know what? Here's the thing with Jason Castro. You can kind of let that slide because his offensive numbers were pretty darn good. His triple slash, 235, which sounds bad, but then you get into on base and slugging, where on base is 356 and slugging is 443. That is a OPS plus of 118 and a WRC plus of 123. And remember, catchers are supposed to be a little bit below average. So that's the equivalent of like a 133 offensive player if he weren't at the catcher position, because again, that's a little bit below average anyway. So he was a very good hitter. His offense was fine. And as a pinch hitter, the dude was just on another planet. Now, obviously, pinch hitting appearances are not a wonderful way to quantify, because even if you do it a lot, he had 23 pinch hit appearances, but then you think about it, and that's like the equivalent of like what, 5 games all totals worth of pinch hitting. But in those 23 pinch hit appearances, he slashed 389, 532, and 667 for an OPS plus of 1188. Like, he was absurd coming off the bench this season. Now, the knocks you can make against Castro are the fact that his defense was not great, but also that he just didn't have a lot of playing time. But that's sort of a hard argument to use against him because he didn't do anything to get less playing time. If anything, he did stuff to get more playing time, like being good offensively. Like, I'm not going to be mad at him because of that. Again, the defense hinders him quite a bit because he was not good. And the offense, like, it was good, and it was light and day difference to Maldonado, but overall for the offense in general, it was still just kind of middle of the road for the Astros offense, so that also is going to matter. Overall, I was pretty happy with Jason Castro in 2021. I think he was good enough to get more than, 37 starts behind the plate, and more than good enough to get more than 66 games. We're going to go right up the middle with Jason Castro. He's going to get a 5 out of 10. All right, the infield, and you know what we got to bring out to start the infield? Yep, we're talking about Yuli Guriel to begin with. Man, what a season for Yuli. A bad 2020 season where Yuli Guriel was just not great. And then the Astros, oddly enough, after a not great season for Yuli, they give him an extension. Everyone kind of loses their minds of, like, why are we extending a guy who's in his late 30s, who just had a down season at first base, which is a position that can decline unforgivingly so, and Yuli said, I am going to have the best offensive season of my career, bar none. And then he did in 2021. Just a great overall well-rounded season for Yuli. Slash 319, that was the best in the league, and he won the batting title, by the way. Again, batting averages and everything, but then you look at on base, 383, that is really good. A 462 slugging, which is, again, pretty darn good. A WRC plus of 134, an OPS plus of 131. Couple that with the fact that he won a Gold Glove. Again, I know defense isn't everything, or Gold Gloves aren't everything, but eye test wise, I thought Yuli was fantastic at first base this season. I thought he had a really nice season at first defensively, and obviously he was fantastic offensively. He just had a great 2021 for the Astros. He was one of our best hitters, and he's aging like fine wine. So I'm very excited to see what he can do in 2022. For Yuli in 2021, I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10. Next up, second baseman, the mini-goat himself, Jose Altuve. I have talked a lot about his 2020 season everywhere, and I've also talked a lot about his 2021 season, about how it was just a return to form. So I think it's pretty clear that I was very, very happy with him in 2021. With fans and full stadiums screaming at him and cursing his name, he replied with, lol, I'm going to be great again. And he was. He was great. Great offensively, great defensively. He just had a wonderful, well-rounded season. With full stadiums cursing his name, he was back to his 2019 self. Slashed 278, 350, 489, a 130 WRC plus. He had 5.2 wins above replacements according to Fangraph. Defensively, I believe he was in the 89th percentile with around 5 or 6 outs above average. Altuve was wonderful in 2021. He was, back to his old self, and it was wonderful to see. I was incredibly happy with Altuve, and because defense is a bit of a better thing over at second base opposed to first, I'm going to give him slightly higher than Yuli. I'm going to give Altuve an 8.5 out of 10 for 2021. Next up, Altuve's double play partner, Carlos Correa. Oh, this one hurts a lot. All right, let's just talk about it, shall we? He was fantastic in 2021. Correa was pretty much average offensively, but absurd defensively in 2020. Comes back in 2021 and is the best shortstop in the American League and one of the best league-wide. Fernando Tatis is really the only reason. I'm not going to say he was the best overall or best in general, but man, Correa had both. He was absurd offensively and amazing defensively, which Tatis, very good offensive season, not so good defensively. And then you have Francisco Lindor, who was probably the best defender just in the league, but not wonderful with the bat in his hands, whereas Correa took both of them and was amazing. Last season, slashed 279, 366, 485, a 134 WRC plus, which led the American League shortstops, like I already said, 89th percentile in outs above average, and was 13th in the league in outs above average with 13. Funny thing about Correa, you know who was one spot behind him in outs above average? Miles Straw. And man, seeing that and the fact that his offense was pretty solid with the Guardians last year, man, Phil Maton really has got to take a couple of strides in 2022 for that deal to end up in our favor. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, Correa. He was great. He was everything you could want out of shortstop. He gave you quality at bats and was a absolute rock in the field. He was magnificent. You could debate that he was our best player. I'm going to give that to a different player. Well, I already have multiple times, but he was if that was your second best player is Carlos Correa, you got a really good lineup. And now we're just sitting back, hearing the rumors, hoping that James Click takes a few yachts loads of cash over to his house and says, please stay in Houston. James Click, I'm serious. Throw him all the money. Anyway, Carlos Correa for 2021, I'm going to give a 9.5 out of 10, and I would give him a 10, but I want to save just a little bit of room to talk about how great Kyle Tucker was in the next video. And finally, for the daily starters, at least in the infield, we have Alex Bregman. And man, what a case study Alex Bregman has been the past 2 seasons. He started 2020 and was good. He wasn't quite the MVP Bregman that he was the year previous, but he was still pretty darn great in 2020 overall. The first 24 games, /272, 374, 500. He was very good. He was still hitting with power. And ever since that injury against the Rockies, his on base has dropped by 25 points. It's dropped from 374 in those first 24 games, and since then it has been at 348. Now, I'm grading on 2021, right? And Bregman gave the Astros a injury-riddled season where he just wasn't there all the time. And when he played, he was fine. He was an above-average hitter with a 113 WRC plus, or 113 OPS plus, and a 115 WRC plus. Right? He slashed 270, 355, 422. Right? The issues with the season were lack of power with mediocre to below-average defense. Now, all that being said, I can see Bregman having an incredible bounce-back season in 2022. His plate discipline has not gone anywhere. I mean, his K rate is as good as ever. K percentage last year was in the 95th percentile. Whiff and chase rate were in the 97th. And his defense is basically identical to where it was in 2019, where he was the MVP runner-up. So, I can see him having a great 2022 season. But I'm not grading on what I think he's going to do this season. I'm grading on what he did do last season. And we're met with a again, a 113 OPS plus and a 115 WRC plus is not a bad player by any means. It's just not where you were expecting Bregman. And I think that's going to be a little bit of why I give him a rating that might be a little bit lower than some people would expect. But he was just fine. He was never a liability in the lineup or in the field, but he wasn't Bregman. So for 2021, I'm going to give him a 5.5 out of 10. All right, the last hitter in the infield, and probably the easiest one to talk about, or the quickest at least, Aledmys Diaz. He was exactly as advertised. He is a utility guy who can play anywhere you want. You want him to play first for a game? He can do that very well. You want him to play second? All right, he can do that. You want him to play shortstop? He can do that. You want him to play third? That's probably where he's best. And he's a good third baseman, right? He is great defensively. 95th percentile and outs above average on Baseball Savant. Fantastic defense from Aledmys Diaz. And he's the definition of an average hitter. A 97 OPS plus. He slashed 259, 317, 405. I believe, I could be wrong, but I want to say league average last year for on base was around 320. I can try to find it really quickly. He was average. He was the definition of average. And that's what you want out of a fifth infielder. With that said, that's what he is. He is your fifth infielder. He is a person who is good defensively and not a liability at the plate. That's what you're getting out of him. He doesn't play every game. He would basically play when someone was injured or when someone needed a break. And he filled that role really well. I like Diaz being on the team. I think he is a very good addition. And if a stopgap for whenever someone's injured is a great defender with a bat that is the definition of average, got a great substitute. That's fantastic. That being said, what you're left with is a meh player with good defense, who certainly isn't going to get every start. So for Aledmys Diaz in 2021, I'm going to give him a 5 out of 10. So just to run it down again for the ratings on the infield and catchers, Maldonado got a 2, Castro got a 5, Yuli got an 8, Altuve got an 8.5, Correa got a 9.5, Bregman got a 5.5, and Aledmys Diaz got a 5. Now, the next video is going to be the outfield plus our DH. So it's going to be Brantley, Chaz, Myers, Tucker, and Yordan. And then after that, I'm going to start working on the pitchers. And, man, this is the first of the 4-part series. So, obviously, there's been a lot that has gone into this. But this has been the most fun, videos to make. Just being able to dig this deep into nerd stuff has warmed my heart and soul. And now that I'm thinking about it, by the time I edit this video and upload it, there might be spring training. There might be spring training games being played when I get this video done and ready, which is so exciting. I am so hyped for this. I've not been this hyped for the season in years. I genuinely thought there was maybe not even going to be a season. I hate being pessimistic like that, but I wasn't convinced there was going to be one. I thought best case scenario, we wouldn't get any baseball till May, and the fact that it's actually starting somewhat on time-ish, and then it was confirmed today that Verlander he's going to start spring training. He's going to be our opening pitcher for our first spring training game, so he's probably going to be ready to start the season. Can you guys tell I'm pretty excited? So that's all I have for the video. Thank you all so very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. And I will see you guys in the next video. So until then, go Stros.